Hey guys, Hidden Truths here. Welcome to this new video with a bunch of new stories. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers and I think we can do it with your help. So please subscribe. It would honestly mean a lot to me. Now, let's get right into the stories.
I never expected a January wind to pry open my retirement, yet it did the evening the estate agent handed me the keys to Dr. Evelyn Marsh's brownstone. She had died 2 weeks earlier, a quiet slip in the night, leaving no family but an advisory note naming me executor of her private archive. The request felt less like an honor than a final puzzle, typical of a neighbor who once preferred Morse code greetings tapped on radiator pipes to a simple, hello. Snow hissed against wrought iron railings as I crossed her threshold, flashlight halo revealing dust grains spinning like cosmic debris. The house still smelled of her sandalwood soap and the faint ozone tang of vacuum tubes cooling after midnight experiments. Attic stairs protested when I climbed, their creaks echoing through rafters webbed with telephone wires she had strung for clandestine antennas. There, beneath a moth-eaten army blanket, waited the box, rough pine, dovetail joints, brass hasp tarnished to dragonskin green. A faded label, courthouse tidy, red Sagaba, the wartime cipher machine forbidden to follow civilians home. I coaxed the lid. Inside lay 3 reel-to-reel tapes, each wrapped in waxed paper like illicit confections, plus a battered Grundig recorder, its Bakelite knobs dulled by fingerprints. On the machine's face someone had engraved with a jeweler's cutter, "If you listen, finish the song." Back in my own apartment, I set the recorder on the oak cart between stacks of incunabula too fragile for general circulation. A half-moon glared through frosted panes, radiators ticked their slow metronome. I threaded the first tape, gingerly seeding ferro-oxide ribbon that smelled faintly of vinegar and cold iron. Playhead engaged with a metallic click. For a moment only hiss, cicada soft, then Evelyn's voice, lower than I remembered, worn satin over gravel. Time stamp, 1:19:08 hours, she began, the diction of field reports slipping into gentler cadence. If you found these reels, my safeguards failed, or succeeded, depending. A pause, the tape crackled like logs in distant fire. Either way, Edmund, I trust your regard for footnotes more than any legal seal. You once told me librarians never lose things, only misplace them in more logical places. I felt heat rise. I had said that while repairing her shortwave, the appetizer for countless late-night talks about archival ethics and the moral gravity of classified ink. She continued, "What you hold is the ash letter, my confession encrypted across breath and oxide. If decoded, it should settle the matter of a blaze on Tremont Street, March 30, 1959, and the shadows that danced beforehand." Hiss again, as if wind toyed with microphone ribbon. "Begin key sequence," she said. "Take down the following." I reached automatically for a pencil, surprised at myself. Her spell compelled immediate obedience. First cipher, Book 42, page 137, line 12, second cipher, Metronome Jazz Club set list, 7 February 1958, third, the initials of my pianist, Mick Hale. Overlay columns and read vertical. The instructions tumbled in segments, each separated by a code clerk click of tongue against palate. My librarian brain mapped sources. Book 42 could be her private shelf, line numbers familiar, the metronome set list might survive on microfiche at the Athenaeum, pianist Mick Hale, unknown surname, likely footnoted in society pages where Cold War Boston flirted with imported culture. Evelyn's breath quickened as she spoke, the microphone capturing rustle of paper and a faint background whine, probably step-up transformer hum. Then, abruptly, the reel ended mid-sentence, no farewell, no leader tape, just ragged tail flapping through guides. I stared at the spinning take-up reel until it stopped, silence thick around me. Radiator clanks resolved into Morse dots. I found myself translating out of habit, don't stop, nonsense, yet the room felt complicit. I rewound to ensure no error and played the last seconds again. Same cut-off. Either she recorded piecemeal or someone had redacted her audio after the fact. My notes already filled 2 pages of a folio-sized index pad, margins crowded by instinctive cross-references. Book 42. Dr. Marsh owned precisely 41 volumes in her study, catalogued during my periodic visits. So a missing item, or deliberately misnumbered sequence, awaited discovery. I pictured her chuckling at my mental inventory, daring me to notice the subtraction. As for the metronome set list, I remembered a clipping pinned by her desk, neon trumpet logo, dates writ in bebop script. The club burned down in '60, archives would be scarce. Tape hiss lingered in the air, a sound that evokes both seashell whimper and distant artillery depending on memory's mood. For Evelyn, whose wartime nights translated enemy coordinates into Allied salvation, hiss might have resembled ghosts asking again. I ejected the reel, thumbed its label, simply I/3 in typewriter ink, slightly smudged. 2 more reels waited like sealed chapters in a banned novel. Snow outside avalanched from rooftop gutters, muffling city horns. I felt an odd kinship with the storm, both of us shoveling through layers to reveal forgotten shapes. Finish the song, her engraving had commanded. Songs contain verses and refrains, perhaps reel 3 offered closure that the first denied. Yet I sensed caution pulsing beneath curiosity. Confessions seldom travel alone, they drag repercussions on leashes of ember-bright memory. I locked the reel back into its wax shroud, as if frost could guard against entropy, and stowed it in my steel cabinet reserved for contested editions of Ulysses and Lady Chatterley. Tomorrow I would sift the brownstone again, hunt for book 42, trace jazz columns, learn Mikhail's surname. Tonight, though, Evelyn's last phrase ricocheted inside the attic of my skull, ash letter. Ash implies burning, letters imply intent. Somewhere between the 2 lay a truth preserved not on paper, but in the magnetized breath of a woman who refused to let history close early. I powered down the Grundig, spool inertia giving one final sigh, as though the tape itself disliked pause. The library's halide bulbs dimmed to after-hours glow. I jotted a final note, begin decoding before embers cool. Then I listened to silence long enough to distinguish it from hiss, snow, even breath, and realized each held a separate message waiting to be read. Morning brought a brittle sun that refracted through icicle chandeliers along Beacon Street, but Edmund Hale noticed only the drag of fatigue as he unlocked Dr. Marsh's brownstone for a second sweep. The hallway smelled of thawing dust and something fainter, perhaps cloves from the cigarettes she hoarded during Eisenhower's first term. He carried 2 things, a portable cassette deck rigged to digitize the tapes and his working notebook, its margin already bristling with fabric tabs. On the study desk he found book 42 almost immediately, though not where logic predicted. Marsh's shelves marched alphabetically until slot 41, then jumped to 43. A gap remained, but blended into shadow so neatly that casual inspection failed. Edmund's fingers reached, met a false back, and slid it away to reveal a slim, cloth-bound journal with ivory boards, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, Golden Cockerel Press, 1937. Tucked inside its flyleaf lay a penciled number, 137, and a faint vertical stroke beneath line 12 of verse, the moving finger writes, and, having writ, moves on. Suitable epigraph for a codebreaker who had outlived her own secrets. He photographed the marked words, then powered the cassette deck, routing reel 2 through modern circuitry so nothing vital scraped away during playback. The hiss began as a low surf, Evelyn's voice followed, closer to a confidant's hush than last night's official cadence. Cipher layer 2, she said, metronome set list, February 7, 1958. Mikhail solos first in C minor, then modulates to E flat. Read sharps as dots, flats as dashes. She inhaled, Edmund heard clinking glass and distant chatter, as if she had recorded in situ. Trumpet runs fluttered behind her words, true live sound, not dubbed. She spliced field recordings, he realized, admiration blooming. Tape ambience shifted, smoky sax reverb painted a club much different from present-day Boston. Edmund pictured red neon bathing Formica tables, waiters sliding Manhattans to bohemian mathematicians, Evelyn seated near the bandstand in a trench coat too large for her frame, government issue, while Mikhail, lean in a sharkskin suit, coaxed Chopin-tinged phrases from a battered Steinway. Why a Soviet expatriate? Hale's archivist brain whispered context, post-Hungarian revolt tensions, defectors trailed by both sides. Evelyn's voice resumed. First refrain, ash descends when the last chorus ends. A pause, longer this time, the recorder motor hummed like a stalled bomber prop. Then, silence. Edmund checked VU meters, alive. The reel still turned, but content ceased, leaving only hiss that accumulated into roaring white, then popped, stuttered. To Edmund, the static morphed into distant gunfire, staccato bursts reminiscent of training films he catalogued for veteran historians. He leaned closer until a sudden clack, the supply reel empty, made him flinch. He rewound and replayed the final 30 seconds 3 times, each loop ended sooner, oxide shedding audible flecks. Stop before loss becomes permanent, he scolded himself, cataloging the truncation time code, 1742. Somebody cut the master or she never finished. He placed reel 3 on a foam cradle but resisted threading it, intuition warned of sequencing. Decoding must precede revelation. At the Boston Athenaeum, Edmund requested microfilm for the Metronome Club. Spooling through headlines he found the set list, February 7, 1958, Mikhail Orlov Trio. Columns of songs with key signatures scribbled by a critic who favored exclamation marks. Mapping sharps to dots, flats to dashes, Edmund transcribed, THFIREWASNOACC identity. His breath clouded the reader's glass, librarians glanced over, curious. He flipped the film, hunting follow-ups. A later piece reported Orlov's sudden disappearance from Boston in March '59, the same month the Tremont Street blaze killed one, Joseph Marsh, aged 10. Edmund's stomach sank. Joseph, Evelyn's only child, had been a photo in her hallway, boy on bicycle framed by lilacs. She lost her son in the fire, she's decoding for me. Guilt pricked, reticence seemed cruelty now. He hurried back to the brownstone, snow squealing beneath his soles. Night had fallen before Edmund threaded reel 3. He pressed play. Evelyn's tone differed, worn, near defeat. If you have come this far, you know Mikhail and I composed dual tongues, music and flame. I decoded cables for Washington by day, jazzed secrets with him by night. When Treasury agents tipped me Moscow might reclaim him, I chose deletion. I set the spark inside the Tremont Street flat, archive room only, yet fire leapt where wind invited. Joseph. Joseph chose that hour to retrieve his toy soldier. He was quiet as his father. I thought the building empty. Her breath hitched, a caught sob strangled into cough. Ash kept the evidence, investigators feared Cold War sabotage, sealed the findings. I accepted public pity, never blame. But guilt is code too, unbreakable until admitted aloud. The recorder captured a match flare, the exhale of a clove cigarette. Tomorrow the Historical Museum unveils unredacted ash letters Mikhail mailed me, believing love outran nations. They will expose complicity, mark me traitor and murderer. I leave these reels so truth arrives with context, not gossip. The tape ticked onward, but sound dissolved into erratic flutter, oxide dropout resembling distant artillery then pure hiss. Edmund stabbed stop, heart drumming like brushed snare. He had until tomorrow evening. The gala began at 7, trustees eager to showcase recently declassified archives. Without her commentary they would brand Evelyn cautionary footnote, her motives drowned. You wanted the song finished, he thought, I'll give them full orchestration. He packed the Grundig, reels, and a portable speaker. Snowstorm warning scrolled across library news tickers, but inside him another weather brewed, courage stitched from empathy and late-night arguments with a genius who had trusted the wrong flame. Tomorrow, beneath museum chandeliers, he would let her voice scatter ash once more, rewound, respoken, understood. Wind chiseled the library's Gothic gutters all night, yet Edmund remained awake on a spare reading room cot, headphones clamped, looping Evelyn's half-erased confession to harvest every phoneme before Oxide surrendered. Between spools he filled yellow pads with symbol trees, her line breaks, breath pauses, microphone clicks, suspecting even silence might hide a final cipher. At 4 a.m., he found it, every seventh intake of breath fell at a regular, metronomic interval. Counting those gaps against the reel's minute marks produced coordinates, row and column numbers that, when overlaid on her transcribed ash letters, illuminated a phrase in pale typewriter ribbon, Gala transfer equals cover. Watch for Room 7. Room 7 belonged to the museum's mezzanine manuscripts vault, closed to guests but accessible from the reception hall by a freight lift often disguised behind velvet drapes. Edmund pictured trustees guiding benefactors past hors d'oeuvre platters while, upstairs, curators quietly relocated the ash letters to a private buyer. The public would applaud declassification, the truth would vanish into some intelligence archive or, worse, a collector's oubliette. They're stealing her second voice before it can speak, he thought, anger crackling like static between headphones. He needed allies, or at least spectators, but the weather sabotaged phone lines, and social networks felt too public for Cold War ghosts. He opted for the safest accomplice, procedure. Museum bylaws permitted archival clarifications during unveilings if new provenance surfaced. By noon he had drafted a 4-page statement citing Evelyn's tapes as supplementary context that trustees must hear to ensure interpretive accuracy. He forged the collection's director's signature using a 1950s Mont Blanc he once restored for her retirement gift, replicating the swooping D precisely. Guilt fluttered but subsided beneath urgency. Afternoon light exposed Boston in glassy stillness, a respite before heavier snow. Edmund packed the Grundig, a battery amp, and a spare reel transfer deck into a librarian's trolley, draping an archival dust cloth over the lot like an Ottoman footstool. He wore a plain black suit, tie-patterned with discreet bookshelves, a gift from his late mother, hoping anonymity might cloak intent until sound did the talking. At 6:30 the museum lobby glittered, marble columns draped with evergreen garlands, crystal pendants catching chandelier sparks. The ash letters rested in a mahogany vitrine under low UV lamps, each envelope's singed edge exhibited like relic bone. A docent rehearsed phrases, post-McCarthy cultural dialogue, for donors whose accents clipped European winters from their vowels. Edmund wheeled his trolley toward the audio booth and produced the forged memo. The young technician, battle-tired by last-minute light plots, merely nodded. "You'll get 3 minutes between the president's toast and the jazz quartet," he yawned, scribbling library insert on the cue sheet. Edmund exhaled. "That's the window, Evelyn." While patrons sipped champagne, he slipped upstairs via service corridor to room 7. Fluorescent light revealed 2 curators and a man in a charcoal overcoat, federal, by posture, examining a fresh leather satchel camouflaged within catering crates. They looked up, Edmund brandished a clipboard. Pre-gala humidity check. The overcoat shrugged approval, paperwork outranks curiosity, and turned back to whisper into a phone whose antenna resembled a silver quill. Edmund measured humidity, genuine task, 27%, then noted crate cereals. Ash letters were indeed set for transit the moment speeches ended. Back down, the gala unfurled, president's toast lauding transparency, donors clinking glass. On cue, the technician beckoned. Edmund threaded real eye into the Grundig patched through house speakers. Needle time seconds crawled, heartbeats drummed blood into his ears. "If you listen, finish the song." He pressed play. Hiss rolled through the hall like surf under marble. Conversations dimmed, puzzled. Evelyn's voice emerged, calm, resonant, unmistakably authentic. Time stamp, 1:19:08 hours. "The ash letter is my confession." A ripple of startled murmurs, historians recognized her name from footnotes, a trustee coughed, fairly choking on canopy. Edmund advanced to reel 2's field recording, club trumpet flaring, patrons suddenly immersed in 1958 smoke. Finally, he switched to the vulnerable segment of reel 3, Evelyn's admission of arson, her son's unintended death, the guilt braided into ashes. Silence followed, heavy enough to ding crystal. Somewhere a woman stifled tears, others stared at their reflections in the vitrine glass now bearing new weight. Edmund faced the trustees. Dr. Marsh recorded these statements so the letters would be heard in full context rather than sold in secret tonight. He gestured subtly toward the mezzanine, curious eyes tracked. Overcoat man retreated, phone at his ear. Too late, the crowd's curiosity now outweighing secrecy, docents escorting journalists upstairs for verification. Chaos simmered, yet Edmund felt only calm resolve as he rewound the reels for preservation copies. A reporter thrust a mic. Did she act alone? Edmund met the mic like a lecture podium. History rarely grants single authorship, he began, voice steady, library quiet yet amplified through the lingering hush. It writes palimpsests, erasures over testimonies. Tonight we allowed the undertext to speak. Security lights flashed where officials cordoned room 7, donors whispered about subpoenas. Snow outside intensified, pressing white palms against stained glass windows as if erasing boundaries between past and present. Amid the swirl, a museum pianist struck tentative chords, perhaps to ease tension, yet for Edmund every note echoed Mikhail's altered nocturne. He packed the Grundig, ownership uncertain now but mission complete. As he wheeled the trolley toward the side exit, the technician caught up, wide-eyed. Your insert just broke the gala. Edmund nodded. Broken things can be read differently, he replied, thinking of Evelyn pointing Morse at radiator pipes. Outside, snow-muffled sirens gearing up for whatever legal storm would follow. Edmund trudged toward the library annex, tape reels nested under his coat like rescued hatchlings. Neon from a diner sign smeared red across snowdrifts, reminding him of club lights long extinguished. In that glow he whispered to the spinning reels in his memory, almost there, one more stanza, preparing for the final act her story demanded. Night had straightened into the small, precise hours librarians recognize, the interval when reference ghosts walk stacks and the city's breath hushes beneath snow-quenched traffic. Edmund Hale sat alone in the annex audiovisual cell, lights dimmed to the low amber mandated for nitrate film, reel-to-reel decks arrayed like sentinels. The gala's upheaval lay 4 hours behind him, yet adrenaline still pulsed sharp enough to sharpen pencils without touching them. On one wall a muted television looped local coverage, historic gala disrupted by tapes, Chiron declaring an inquiry into Cold War malfeasance. Trustees appeared gray-faced, the overcoat man refused comment. Through glass, Edmund watched snow halo the streetlights, each flake a white asterisk in a footnote nobody had thought to include. He threaded a preservation copy of Evelyn's third reel onto a studio machine, leader tape spliced with fresh mylar. The original reels, now evidence, sat in climate custody, but this duplicate felt just as alive. He had promised her voice would not molder in bureaucratic dark, and promises, like archives, required redundancy. As Capstan engaged, he listened, not to confession but to breaths between sentences, each inhale catching on grief's barbs. Cipher clerks survive by economizing air, he mused, every sigh budgeted. A knock at the glass startled him. Agnes Maury, senior curator of manuscripts, stepped inside, wool coat shedding snowflakes like punctuation marks. They've postponed the transfer, she said, voice pitched low. Board claims chain of custody compromised. Federal Archives will review before any sale. She eyed the spinning reel. That's her, isn't it? Edmund nodded. Agnes removed gloves, revealing an envelope. Found this in room 7, wedged behind the humidity gauge. Your name in her hand. She slid it across. Inside lay a single Polaroid, Evelyn and young Joseph at the 1958 Metronome Club, sax light streaking the film, both mid-laugh. On the back, in violet ink, she'd written, Music outlives allegiance. Beneath, coordinates matched the breath cipher Edmund had decoded. The photograph felt less like memento than seal of completion, an archivist's final stamp. Agnes folded arms. You realize trustees may pursue disciplinary review. Unauthorized playback, forged signatures, her rebuke softened into weary admiration. "But you saved the collection from whitewash." Edmund managed a half-smile. "Footnotes need verbs." She left, and the room resumed its hush. Edmund placed the Polaroid atop the deck where snowlight met chrome reels. Tape hiss rose, then Evelyn's earlier cadence blossomed. "To the finder, history writes drafts, conscience edits." He closed his eyes. In that instant he sensed her presence not as haunting guilt but as a colleague shelving the last volume of a long, contentious series. The recorder clicked off at reel end, inertia letting tape ribbon spin a few ghost loops before settling. Edmund rewound, satisfied the duplicate captured every watt of sorrow and resolve. He labeled the case Marsh Collection, Series A and logged metadata into the catalog, accession pending, rights undetermined. In the description field he typed, primary source confession contextualizing the ash letters, includes live club ambiance, personal reflections, sonic cipher intervals. He hesitated, then added, provides ethical counterpoint to declassified correspondence. Librarian prose, yes, but also an epitaph. Outside the booth he pushed a rolling ladder along stacks until he reached a section reserved for materials, awaiting policy. There, between an unexpurgated leaves of grass and minutes from a 1920 obscenity trial, he placed the Marsh case. No digital copy yet, silence still safer on ferric oxide than in cloud servers. He slid the shelf closed, click of latch echoed down the aisle. Weariness finally claimed him, but before extinguishing desk lamps he unpacked the battered Grundig that had begun this journey. A swirl of dust rose where its feet met the blotter, faintly scented with that sandalwood ozone mix. He threaded a leader strip, pressed play. Empty tape ran, producing nothing but soft mechanical whisper. Edmund addressed the void as though Evelyn sat opposite, "Room's yours now." He pictured her adjusting headset, smile crooked, ready to remix spools of memory until they synced with conscience. Snow intensified, rattling window panes like curious fingers. He leaned to the mic still connected to the amp, spoke a single closing line so quietly only the tape, and perhaps the night, would hold it, "Some secrets burn." Hers rewound.